Some breaking news from Capitol Hill. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has just announced, quote, "We have an agreement," acknowledging that there is a deal. This now seems like all parties are in agreement. They have all parts in place. House Speaker John Boehner met with the House Republican caucus from 9:45 until recently. I think they might still be in that meeting. We have word from a GOP source that he sold the deal to this caucus. They've agreed to it. Senator Harry Reid now saying, and this looks like Speaker Boehner to speak right now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased that Senator Reid and I and the White House have been able to come to an agreement that will, in fact, cut spending and keep our government open. And I expect that the House will vote yet tonight on a short-term continuing resolution into next week to allow for time for this agreement to be put together in legislative form and brought to the floor of the House and Senate for a vote. And so I would expect the final vote on this to occur mid-next week. But I do believe that we'll have a what we'll call a bridge continuing resolution passed tonight to ensure that government's open. As you all know, this has been a lot of discussion and a long fight. But we fought to keep government spending down because it really will, in fact, help create a better environment for job creators in our country. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, how much
Well, that was brief. House Speaker John Boehner confirming that there is, in fact, a deal. He says that they have a deal worked out. They will, and we will hear some updates now from Mike Viqueira, who is with us live. White House correspondent Mike Viqueira. Mike, what do we know?
Well, Chris, it's as we've been reporting, apparently John Boehner able to make the sale to the House GOP conference. Many of those conservatives, it was touch and go there for a while. We didn't know whether they would buy it. He did not elucidate the details, of course. What we've been reporting through the course of the last several hours is that they did agree to cut spending for the rest of this fiscal year with the president and Harry Reid, the Democratic leader, by $39 billion. You remember at the beginning of the week, the Democrats led in these negotiations by President Obama in the West Wing, just behind me here. 4 times did Harry Reid and John Boehner meet with the president there. The White House started the week at the figure of $33 billion. So doubtless John Boehner and his surrogates, his people, are going to be claiming a victory, getting the administration to come up to 39 from 33 billion. On the other hand, that policy's quote-unquote rider that had been the last-minute sticking negotiations over the course of this day, that stumbling block about defunding those so-called Title X organizations, including Planned Parenthood, the leader of which you just had on your air, apparently has been dropped. They've finessed that somehow. I'm hearing some various reports about how they're going to handle that, either a standalone vote on the floor of the House and the Senate, or they're going to tackle it at some point in the near future, perhaps as part of that big deficit and debt ceiling raising that you've also been talking about tonight. But there you have it, John Boehner. Bottom line here, no shutdown. John Boehner able to make the sale. We can expect to hear from the president relatively shortly, assuming everything is on the up and up there. Certainly a good day for 800,000 civilian employees of the United States government. Certainly a good day for the more than 2 million men and women in uniform, where we're going to see their pay deferred. A little bit of the nuts and bolts there. You heard Boehner talk about a short-term stopgap resolution. That's going to allow 2 things. First, it will allow him to fulfill a pledge to let the House of Representatives have 72 hours. Remember, this is something that Republicans ran on, a sort of a procedural change, cleaning up the House, they like to call it, allowing them to read the bill before voting on it, something as momentous as what's been debated. And second of all, it's got to be put in legislative language. That's not something we're going to do between now and midnight, however long that is, an hour and 15 minutes from now. So they're going to have everything's going to move relatively quickly, ironically enough, over the course of the next several minutes here in Congress. They're going to put that short-term 4 or 5 day continuing resolution to allow them to take care of the things that we just outlined. And then the bigger bill, John Boehner indicating midweek, an agreement to fund the United States government through the remainder of this fiscal year that runs until September 30th, Chris.
We've now heard from Speaker Boehner, and there's been some discussion that we'll be hearing from Senator Reid. Do you expect we'll hear from the president tonight?
I do, Chris. I do. The choreography of this was obviously the president. The White House wasn't going to come out and trumpet anything before John Boehner made that sale behind closed doors. You see him there. They typically meet in a room called HC5 in the basement of the Capitol. He emerged from that room having the approval or at least enough votes within his conference. We can assume that's a substantial majority of his conference to come forward and declare that he had, in fact, come to an agreement with the president. Having that out of the way now, the sensitivities about the president breaking the news to the Republican conference are over. We could probably expect to hear from Harry Reid very shortly as well, either just outside the Senate chamber or on the Senate floor itself. Again, they've still got some nuts and bolts here to take care of, some housekeeping to take care of over the course of the next few hours in Washington. All that sort of is trivialized by the larger issue here, and that is there is an agreement and there's not going to be a shutdown. We can presume that we are going to hear from the president sometime relatively shortly, certainly before midnight tonight from here at the White House, Chris.
Mike Viqueira, MSNBC White House correspondent, thanks so much. Really appreciate all your work tonight. All right, just to recap, it looks like, well, it has been announced that there is a deal between the Republicans in the House, the Democratic-controlled Senate, and the White House to fund the government. There will be no shutdown this evening if they can get things together in the next hour before that clock runs out. The deal, apparently $39 billion in cuts, which does not include the very controversial riders, which would have defunded Planned Parenthood and not allowed them to provide health services of any kind to women across the country, and all the other riders that were being negotiated earlier today. $39 billion in cuts. The government does stay open. They will pass an interim continuing resolution this evening in the next hour to keep things open for the next 5 or 6 days while they debate that. We are expecting, as the night goes forward, to hear from Senator Majority Harry Reid and finally President Barack Obama. NBC News' live coverage of the no longer impending, I should say, government shutdown continues now with Lawrence O'Donnell and the last word.